Esteemed. Let's welcome our panelists, Noelle, Sue, Chafflin Mora, the Director of Training at Colaris, as well as our other panelists.
Thank you, everyone. I know there's very few left actually here. I think this is more for the online folks, but thank you for those who actually stuck around to listen. My name is Noelle Sue Chalfant Mora. I'm the Director of Training for Colaris, and I'm here with two others. There's a third, hopefully you'll be joining us to talk about blended learning. Blended learning as a definition is a multiple of learning modalities put together in some form of a curriculum. And the word curriculum actually has about 10 definitions depending upon your viewpoint, but let's assume for now it's an overall learning path or learning journey for someone. And when you do blended learning, it's taking all of those different pieces together to put it into the most effective learning for your audience, whoever it happens to be. So hopefully we'll be able to share some stories, things that we've actually done, observed in the industry. I have great panelists with me, and hopefully we'll be able to give some information. I'll let everyone introduce themselves, and then we'll start. Bob, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Bob Safran, and again, I was in a panel the other day, but I've been in education for about 50 years, and my experiences include public school teaching, college publishing. Uh, I had two career schools for 35 years, and now I completely work on an online English grammar program called eGump. eGump stands for E for English, G for grammar, U for usage, M for mechanics, P for punctuation program. So it's a English program teaching students how to become proficient writers and improve their writing and speaking skills.
Deb, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Deb Miner Kowalchuk. I'm a graduate student working on my dissertation in the data analysis phase, but I am taking a blended learning program and I have taught in a blended learning program.
Great, thank you. And just to give everyone a little bit more about my background, I've been actually in technical training. So I've been in the corporate world, mostly representing with software companies or different types of industries related to software. The one I have now, actually, we have a software that monitors and helps people move containers around in the ports. So if you ever go by your airport and you have all those containers piled about a mile high and they come in on these big vessels, the software that my company creates helps to move those between the vessels, the rail, gates, and through the yard. But my niche has always been I'm a very technical programmer. I mean, I'm technical by nature. That is my many degrees. But I also learned psychology long ago to figure out how you blend mathematics, computer science, and learning. And that's where I got into training was the ability to take these really complicated topics and break them down so that anyone can learn it. And I've spent 35 years in all these different environments putting that together and putting together different types of programs from certification to everything around. Oh, and here is our last panelist. Hi, Nadine. Go ahead, I'll let you introduce yourself.
How are you?
Good.
Okay. So, Nadine Shammas, I'm an author, and my background is in education and entertainment at the same time. And lately, I released my book, The Stage is Yours, where I take people to sit in the director's chair and to see their life from a 360 view and assess their story and teach them how to write a professional script that they can be who they want to be and who they are meant to be in life. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for the introduction. I think what we can do is start with having some discussions and giving some of our experiences with different types of blended learning programs. And I'll let my esteemed colleagues go first. Bob, why don't you talk about some of the blended curriculums that you've been involved with, some of the pros, cons, observations you've seen, what's worked, what's not worked so well over the years, because you've got a great background across it.
Well, let me basically say this. I'm not as technically involved as the other members of the panel. When I looked at the online learning and blending, classroom learning, and how it applies to my program, it's pretty simple. Okay, first of all, my program EGOM is designed. It's a building block approach, and it's similar to diagramming a sentence. And it starts very simply by you identify a noun subject. Then you identify a pronoun subject, and you move to the subject and a verb, and then you add a direct object, and then you add adjectives and adverbs. And by the time you finish 20 lessons, building block, same as multiplication tables. You start with the one tables, the two, but you don't go to the threes until you master the twos. So that was how we teach an understanding. By the time they finish 20 lessons, a student is able to look at any sentence, identify every word, phrase, and clause, and it really does problem solving. It does critical thinking because at that point, just like once you master arithmetic, if somebody says to you how much is 7 times 8 or 12 times 4 or whatever, you can do it automatically. Well, once you master my program, now you're thinking critically. If I said to you, write a complex sentence that includes an adverb clause and has a participial phrase, now when you stop and think about what that means that you have to do, and you're able to do that in your head, you're problem solving, you're doing critical thinking. So in my program, the the whole idea online is to be able to do that and do it as many times. We call our exercises practice to mastery, graded exercise, because if it takes you 10 times or 12 times for rote memory until you learn it, and you don't move on until you do the next one. Now, let's take the classroom writing side of it. Okay, it's one thing to be able to understand and pass the test and say you could do these things. But now, when you can take the classroom writing side of it, and now you have students actually worksheets where they write sentences. And once you're able to write the sentences, so all of a sudden the worksheet says, all right, you've finished 10 lessons. Now write me a sentence with a positive phrase and an adjective clause or whatever it might be. You're able to do that. You mastered it. So the three R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, are all the same. If you learn reading phonetically, you don't remember all the vowel sounds or how you learned it. The fact is you can read, and that's all that what's really important. When you really learned arithmetic, you used probably flashcards or something, and you went through the tables until you learned it. And in grammar, in the old days, when schools were still called grammar schools, you diagram sentences. And you drew those silly lines and you put subject and all these things there. And that's why the people that graduated 10 or 20, 30 years or 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s that had experienced those things never had a problem with writing. Today, it's the opposite. When you Google and you look at reports, one, you find that 78% of students today are not proficient with writing skills. And then it tells you that it affects everything else they're learning if they don't have those skills. When you look at corporations, there are reports out now that 40-50% of college graduates are graduating without the writing skills necessary to do the job. In fact, I have a friend has a paralegal firm, and he's making zillions of dollars because he's taking young lawyers working for and they're having him rewrite their briefs because they can't write it themselves. So my idea with the blending learning, and you can learn a lot more from the panel here, is mine talks about taking an online product, adding classroom work to it, and that's it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. We're sharing mics here. Deb, why don't you go ahead and give some of your great experience?
So I'm going to tell you a little story about a lady who graduated when she was 15 and applied to one college, couldn't afford it, and never went until I had 5 kids and decided that was a missing piece in my life and I wanted to go back. So initially, I went to my community college, showed up on campus, said I'm going to give it the summer and I'm going to see what happens. Went for the summer, was a completely different experience than what I had when I was in K through 12 in high school. And so I decided to continue. And I learned when I registered for my second semester of classes that I could go online. And I went, oh, I can study online. I have 5 kids at home. This is beautiful. I love it. And I went through the rest of my bachelor's and the rest of my master's degree all online. Never missed a beat. Loved it. No complaints. However, in 2018, when I decided to go for my doctorate, I did a little switching in my decision making. I said, I don't have kids at home. They're all grown. I lack social connections. I need other things to do with my time. And so I'm going to look for a blended learning program because I want those social aspects that's going to bring to me. So that's what I did. I looked for a program within 50 miles that offered my major in a program that was blended learning environment. And I would not trade it for the world. The cohort experiences are fantastic. I've gained a lot of friends, support system, and enjoy it immensely.
Great.
That's nice. For me, the first time I went online, it was in 2001. And I moved to Dubai, and I love to learn. In Dubai, I was working, and I was interested in a certification in distance learning in Phoenix, Arizona, in the university. And back then, it was something in the US. I'm taking a certification, a degree, and that was something amazing. So I started taking online courses and I finished. And to be honest, I wanted to come to Arizona because you have to graduate, you have to come to the ceremony here. I couldn't. But going back to that blend between online and in person during Corona, that was an amazing thing that happened because we didn't lose touch with the old world that we are connected in, especially me as a speaker, or I do lots of workshops. So I was working every day, like, and I had like a presence more than 100 people online, and I discovered lots of tools and techniques that help you also like be there as if you are in person. And what I realized is that people are more focused when you have the screen because they look only at you and they are just focused on what is going on in the on the screen. And after Corona also, so we started making a blend. So we had like I did a big conference, a big workshop for Dell, and we had 20 people only in person and 150 on the big screen. And it was an amazing experience because we were interacting as if everybody is here. So I think that this is an amazing a tool that is happening in the world where we are all connected and nothing can stop us from moving forward and doing everything that we want to do. And also in Corona, I was releasing my songs, and definitely I cannot go out and do a video clip. So I did it like with people online. They were all dancing and singing with me, and we did something amazing all over the world. So I think that this is an amazing thing. Yet, it's very important to have the human touch. It's nice to feel the energy, to retouch the people. So it's amazing. And plus, you can learn as much as you want when you have all those online courses. So this is it for me, and I'm enjoying everything that is happening. And now I'm doing my course, that is the life director course that is in my book, and it will be an online course and it in person. But why not spread it to the world, and everybody can have access to it, and at the same time it will not be as expensive as coming and traveling and being in person. Yes, they are taking the same knowledge, and you can always connect on Zoom for whatever.
Great, thank you. And I want to share a little bit of my experience because it's different than some of my panels being again in the corporate training world. We are all about not just blending e-learning, micro-learning, recorded training, instructor-led, Virtual classes, of course, those are your mainstays, but we also blend into it additional things like gamification, virtual reality, job aids, certification tests associated with our product, and we find ways to blend that in. It gets more interesting also when you blend so many different modalities together, because one, you do have to know who your learners are, and in my case, they're people at the docks. It's anything from a union laborer, maybe someone right out of high school, all the way up to the leadership or somebody who's been there for 40 years who's managing the terminal. Very different learning styles, very different personalities, very different job roles. So what we've been able to do is blend all of those pieces together and give alternatives. So if you think about a subway map, okay, you want to get to your destination, but in sometimes you could take the express train, you could go this way, maybe you could take the local. I'm from New Jersey, so I'm talking about New York City trains, which is a whole different ballgame, but you get the point. You can get to the destination in many ways, and it allows the learner and the personality to change and have some control over what they do. There's hundreds of courses that are online. There's hundreds of instructor-led classes we could do, but we blend it together. And I'm also a big proponent that things like virtual reality, VR, glasses, and even our gamification, I've had to defend this for probably 20 years whenever I've discussed it, because whenever somebody hears the word game, they think about one of my 6 kids sitting there with one of their game systems over the years. We have old kids who are in their late 20s and then some younger ones in their late teens. And let me just tell you, their noses are into the game, but it's what I call a beat the clock game. It's not learning a learning objective or a skill. Not really, not unless you're trying to get your thumbs in practice for, I don't know, whatever you're going to be, maybe a flight simulator. But really, that's just playing with the joystick or the keyboard. What we do in our gamification is we first determine, what is the learning objective? What do I want this person to demonstrate? Not just play, demonstrate a skill. And how do you build that in? So let's say that they failed now the game. It happens. How do you not give them reinforced learning, bring them back into the game? Now they're successful. How do you build that whole piece? And I've had many times where people say, well, it's just a game. I said, if it was just a game, I should be out of a job. Fire me now. Fire my team. We did it wrong. It should be about building the skill set and how we can get those people over the finish line. Same with virtual reality. In our cases, we're dealing with cranes. I mean, many of you have seen those giant cranes at the ports. Those things don't want to topple. You're talking about vessels that could capsize. Things are very safety conscious. If somebody makes a mistake, it could be, someone's death. We're not talking about something that's like a game of checkers. So we really want to make sure that when we do those virtual reality, the safety is also brought into it. It's not a matter of fun. We want to make sure that when they're, bringing the containers where they need to go, it doesn't create a problem or a safety or somebody gets hurt. Or worse yet, you stack them up too high. The wind is a little bit of a problem when it comes over and it blows them over. Somebody shouldn't be on the other side of them. So that's our version of blended learning. It's much more than just e-learning and instructor-led, the ILT. It's how do I take all of those modalities and weave them together to get someone from point A through all these learning objectives to point B, and eventually really in their job better. Because my whole thing is I'm supporting our software. Our software is being used. If somebody has installed it, but they haven't trained their people, that's a bad component. It doesn't matter how good the software is. If the person controlling it doesn't know what they're doing or makes an incorrect input, yes, we're all human, but at the same point, it should be able to be smart enough to make sure that you have good input overall in a repeatable thing. That's where the most effective piece of it. I used to call it the triangle. When you have software, you have hardware, and you have people. If each one of those is not correct or in sync, you will not have the efficiency in your usage of it. So that's the world that I come from. It's a little bit different than some of my colleagues here, but that's how our modalities come into play. One of the other things I wanted to talk about and bring to our everyone's thought here, a bit of social learning. This is another type of blended learning that has just come into style, I'd say, over the last 5 to 10 years. Not in terms of the social network of let's all go on and post pictures of our parties, what actually is learning. And I wanted some of the team to talk about what your experience is with social learning and how that might play into positively into your curriculum. Bob.
Yes, I think we all know that English is the universal language today, where all over the world people are learning to develop their English skills. Now, part of blending learning to me is that in our program, and we are on very close to finishing what we call our ELL, English Language Learner EGUM program. And we're blending three different things. First of all, you will have a sentence, which basically they're diagramming in each lesson. Now, you're also going to have a listening button. So the person that may not be a native English speaker is able to hear how the words are spoken in English. And then there's a translator that will then, they'll be able to look at the sentence, hear it in English, and then translate it to their language. So how would you say this, for example, in Spanish or in German or whatever it might be? So that part of it's blending learning. And then we're adding another component where what we're trying to do to keep the interest, especially a lot of younger students and everything else, where the questions or the sentences that appear are could be things such as sports trivia, or they could be history, they could be whatever it might be. If somebody was in a class that involved becoming a medical assistant, and they needed or they were studying also medical terminology, well, the sentences can be related using the medical terminology, so they can then again hear how the term, what the term means, what the definition is. They can hear it in English, they can translate it, and that's to me another part of what blending learning could be all about.
Deb?
Are we talking about social learning theory, or are we talking about using social platforms in our blended learning?
All of the above.
Okay, so building in social learning experiences is one of the things actually that I'm studying in my dissertation, online community. That is building in things that are collaborative in the online environment, um, threaded discussions where peers can learn from each other, uh, intensive writing assignments. These are all high impact practices. Um, those are building in your social aspects. You're working with peers. There's high levels of interaction. If you're talking about using social media platforms, also there's a lot of research on that right now. Classes are using them to augment their own learning management systems, and there is a lot of success happening with them on a case by case basis.
For me, if we'll talk about social media, I think now it's a necessity for all the businesses and everything, because it's not only about posting and about the followers, it's about showing exactly what do you do and what are you offering. And I think that now everyone is being more and more creative in the content that they want to deliver. And there's a lot of learning. Only by scrolling, you can every time take an idea, have an insight. Maybe before we had a little bit of what is going on social media, but now I feel that this is a very important to exactly deliver what are you doing. If you are in the teaching, what are you delivering? If you have a business, what are you delivering? So creating also content keep you all the time more in the research platform, and then you can collaborate. And this is very important also. You can collaborate with other people, and you can find like-minded people from all over the world. So working on the social media as a platform from a business profile, I think it's very important and very beneficial for all the learnings.
Nadine, I know you described to me a lot about your business when we first met, and you talked about um, coming from the acting world
Yeah.
and stemming from that and becoming your own director to it. When you started into that, part of social learning to me is being able to take those people together and have them, I'll say, mentor each other, give them suggestions and collaboration. That's something that sounds like what you had built with your platform. Can you elaborate a little bit on that journey? Because I think that does very much apply to this.
Say again. I didn't understand the first one.
The first one is basically when you had developed your program
Yes.
and people were coming in to understand their own story,
Yes.
you had said to me that um, you were giving mentoring or people were giving information to each other and feedback.
Yes.
That's a type of social learning.
Yes.
And I wanted to expand upon that to talk about it because I think it's really a mentoring as a concept is social learning.
Yeah.
And your program exhibits a lot of that, how it's evolved. And I thought that would be a very good discussion.
So the program is all about interacting and engaging with thoughts and stories. So for me in the program, we say that life is just a story. So people will start like talking about their story from the perspective of the director, and then this is where they will find that first of all, there's a lot of common things between all of us. We all go through the same things. And this also creates a community. So the community that you feel safe and you feel that you can say what you want to say, and it's just a story. So you're not really attached. And creating that community give us a space where everyone feel free to just say what they want to say without titles. In one of the exercises that I do, and this is a beautiful exercise, when they come, I tell them, can you create a fake social account for you? And when they create their fake social account, actually, they discover that that fake account is exactly who they are. And the real one is the one that is fake. So, and this is an insight like, oh, so if you are not saying exactly, you're using your own name, then you can say who you are at the core. And this is also creates like an aha moment and saying, oh my God, is this really me? Yes, it is you. And the beautiful thing also, we find that we are all mirroring each other. So you know more about someone telling you not about themselves really, and they this will be the connection from on a subconscious level and from the heart. Yeah.
Yes, great. Thank you. And that's what I was hoping you were going to bring out because I think that's really a great collaboration. Community-based learning or social learning, or another word for it is cohorts. There's many different terminologies. Take the LMS system du jour, and they will have their own terminology. But I do think it's very important. Piece to a blended learning environment is learning from each other, whether it's discussion boards, whether it's mentoring, whether it's actually part of a set of the assignments, collaboration. Deb, I know you mentioned when you and I had sat down, you had some cohorts and some projects together with others. And I really think that that's a very important part of our learning, whether it's in person, whether it's online, whether it's video. There's different mediums. The medium itself doesn't necessarily matter, but it's blending that piece to it because that human element is just as critical, kind of what you were just talking about as well, Nadine. And Deb, you were talking about your cohorts to me. Why don't you talk a little bit about that in your program? Because I think that was really critical.
Sure. I'm in a cohort model. Over 3 years of coursework, the cohort, which started as 17 people, met on campus for 3 days of intensive face to face learning. But we got to know each other. We went to dinner together. We often stayed in the same place. And the relationships that we forged in that 3 days over and over as new semesters arose are relationships that I still carry with me now in my dissertation phase. People that I can go back to and ask them to read my paper or ask them to brainstorm ideas with me or what have you. It's because of those relationships that were forged over those 9 semesters.
That's great. Thank you. Bob, did you have any you
Well,
wanted
I
to
can
share?
do one thing for sure. Every time there's a panel so far, there hasn't been any commercials. So I think it's time for a commercial, right, me? So anybody in the audience that would like to demo for free eGump, then because the only way you're going to know whether you, a friend, wants to improve their English grammar skills, or hopefully, schools that have people in position that to look at the program, come see me, and I will give you a business card, and all you do is scan on it, and you will come to our website, and you push another button, and you will have a demo of eGump, and you will be happy that you did it. Thank you. That's
Thank
the
you.
commercial.
Okay.
Well, I've got one too. Considering some of the people out there are our family members, can we nominate some of them? Anyway, go ahead, Nadine. You were going to say something.
No, I was just thank you. I'm saying thank you for.
Excellent. Well, what I want to do is, I know there's not many folks here, but are there any questions for ourselves? We have other things we can talk about with blended learning, but a lot of people come into it with set questions, set different perspectives to it. Is there any questions that you might have about it or things that we want to discuss? I'm sorry, I didn't, the first part. Mm. Well, from my perspective, when you have a corporation, you have to have a learning culture. If you don't have the learning culture, at least as part of the innate element to it, you're kind of SOL, or at least you're up in an uphill battle. You're going to start with the HR team, the L&D team, the training team, whatever it is. But at some point, people have got to want to be a part of that team and be a part of the learning and not have what I call the silo effect. To me, a silo effect is the following: mine. Okay, it's the 3-year-old mentality of taking a toy. Knowledge is mine. I'm not going to share it because I'm scared that my job is going to be in jeopardy or I might not get that promotion or whatever the case is. What they don't realize is that's the actual 3-year-old mentality. And if you start to learn to share, you actually build a better organization that can be more powerful because you've built a foundation to it. But the team needs to start there and needs to start with the learning piece of not wanting that stovepipe or silo effect, that you need to go across teams, to go across functions. Finance needs to work with HR, which needs to work with IT, R&D, marketing, sales. Okay, these normally don't necessarily work in conjunction, and in some cases they're at odds with one another. If they start to see it and working together, I do believe you're going to get a better learning out of it and a better foundation, more, productivity, and in some ways more happiness. I think one of the other panels talked about, it wasn't the one before, two before, they were talking about the fact that what do the millennials want, okay, in terms of employment? And I can tell you, we've seen this in ours. If you don't give them a 3 to 5 year development plan, besides the very, 6-figure salary, which put aside, if you don't give them a development plan, they will not take a job. I've actually seen them turn it down if I can't show a curriculum path and a journey to, if you start here and you do this, you'll get to here and here. If they don't see it, they're going to go find another organization. And it is even more prevalent in some other countries where, again, I'm in a global organization because of the ports. We see it even more prevalent in India, in our India office. This is mandatory. We must give them a development plan as part of the employment package. Otherwise, we won't be able to entice somebody in. So that's in one case. Panel, other thoughts?
No, we have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Two questions.
2 questions. Okay. Panel,
I'm not exactly sure how to answer that.
okay, I mean, I can give my opinion if y'all want, okay? What I can say is the first part of your question was talked about gamification and those type of environments. I do think it is a critical element to it. It will evolve as time goes on. The piece to it that I think was missing for many years was the instructional design theory to it. You had game developers over here, okay, coding away. And then you had the IDs over here building curriculum, and they didn't quite talk to each other or they didn't understand the same language. I only think it's rather recently, in the last few years, they've started to get together. And what you've started to see is a realization that games are not, as I said, just for fun. They can reinforce the learning. Metaverse is something that's interesting, and all of those from a medical perspective. Uh, they're teaching people how to do procedures with that VR, with that technology. That I think has also made folks realize the power of it. When you used to go to the conference, we went to CES a number of years ago and I saw the VR goggles. I was in a party dancing, okay, is what they showed me. That to me was like, okay, this is fun, but what does it have to do with learning? It wasn't until somebody then started applying that technology to a school-based curriculum of learning how to do a medical procedure as an example that I think people started to take notice of it. I actually think things like those virtual reality, the augmented reality, the 360, all of those pieces are going to become much more critical to first higher ed. I think higher ed's going to do it first, more so just because they tend to have better open minds than corporate America. Okay, corporate America or corporate worldwide tends to be a bit more, and especially when they look at the price tag of it. Okay, you could develop a course in X amount of time. It takes a lot more and a different skill set to develop a game. I think higher ed is going to really continue to excel on it, my opinion. But I do see corporate America. I see the top 50, the top 100, the more forward-setting companies realizing the value of it. So, in my opinion, that's what I see happening over the years. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
after I had to think about that, what your question was, and how many people in here ever play? And we all have seen Jeopardy, right? Right? Well, what I've done over the years is I held three different grammar bowls, like spelling bees, and they were highly successful. I had two in Arizona and one in Pennsylvania. And basically, we took eighth and ninth graders, we gave them the program. They had to master the program. So that meant that they had to score, like multiplication tables, they had to score 91 to 100% in every lesson. And by the time they finished, they could qualify for our Grammar Bowl. Now, once they qualified for the Grammar Bowl, then like Jeopardy, when we had when they were competing, and they were competing at the Grand Canyon University in Arizona. So picture this: you had two students with buzzers, and on the screen we would have questions, and it would be something like, of the three sentence, which sentence has a participial phrase? Buzz. Okay, you got a point. So the first one got 3 points. So we did this like March Madness. We went from 64 to 32, but we offered a prize each time they moved down to 16. And as it turned out, the people, the young ninth graders who are now, this was a bunch of years ago, who are now either seniors or graduating college, the top students, when they took the SATs and the ACT tests, were all scoring either perfect scores or near perfect scores. And most of them, not only because of their grammar skills, but all their skills, they were able to get scholarships at schools like Stanford and Yale and Arizona State University and everything else. So I think the whole idea of making people, everybody likes games. Games are fun. And another thing that we're looking at In our lessons, we call lesson reinforcers. And in our lesson reinforcer now, when the sentence comes up and the question that comes up, you you practice that until you get 15 in a row right. Now, if we added the timer feature to it, and then we added it on the network, and you got 15 in a row right, but it took you 22 seconds. Somebody else did it in 18 seconds or whatever. And I think all of that because that there are so many kids are very competitive and they want to get involved. So I think there's a great place in education for any types of games being played. Anybody else?
Nadine, Deb, any comments? Any comments?
So about games, games are very important because we learn by experience. So in my talk also yesterday, I was talking about people love to move and people love to experience a new thing more than what is given. So and what happens is when we play games, we become more creative and we get more insights and we move. And in anything in my program also, even in the online course, there are many games to do. And also I developed a game like a board game where we have cards, and in each card we have different characters and different situations, and then we start building a story out of those cards. And this story, it's like a vision board. It will manifest into what is it that we want to do. So it's always giving us you feel playful and happy to create, not only to visualize or to imagine or just be in one place.
Great, I agree. Thank you. I think there was another question somewhere. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I agree as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Focused on that camera that's focused on you, and there's not too much distance between those cameras and the person, and that makes a big difference when you're looking at what I'll call the Hollywood squares of having all the people up. It changes it. You would think it's not, but it's the exact opposite. The only difference is you can't make folks sit there. They do have to get up a little bit from their own desk. It's sometimes a bit different than being in a classroom because there's a bit more distraction. But what I would say is as long as you can account for the physical element to it, they are very much engaged with it. I would wholeheartedly agree.
I think this generation, they don't have a problem
Yeah,
sitting in front of the
exactly.
screen. For us, maybe it's like distracting because we don't know how to sit still and watch, you know. But for this generation, all they do is they have their screen, so it's much easier for them to focus, and they are multitasked. So they do many other things at the same time. But as I said, they focused also in during Corona. Also, the kids were at home and they were like studying throughout this, and they had better grades than when they used to go to school.
Well,
So because yeah.
there's different screen sizes when you talk about the kids. I don't know about anybody else, but our kids would love if they could just sit there at dinner table every day with a phone about here, taking selfies, doing something. And so the screen doesn't always have to be a large computer screen. It's a phone in their face, something that none of us grew up with for sure. In my generation, I was like, what was a cell phone? I mean, we had those things attached to the wall that had a rotary dial to it. Okay, I first used punch cards on a computer. Okay, I'm telling my age now. Anyway, there was one other question in the back. Sorry.
I like taking online classes and in-person classes simultaneously. I think that's the best mix. In the face of not having that available in the doctorate program, what I did was the next best thing. It means that as I go through the dissertation phase, I have only the relationships I've built. Otherwise, there's no interaction. So it's interaction that we facilitate on our own.
I would also add to that, I think you need to also define your learner. Okay. If again, to go back to my learners in the industry, if I take those labor workers, online learning, some of them don't even have laptops at home. Okay. So them trying to do learning is less than stellar. The games, they love it because they can play them when they're somewhere, whatever, or an instructor led, they prefer the face to face. So I think part of it is it depends on the audience, and you need to do a profiling of who your learner is to determine the best style of a learning that they have or can use. And also, how can you influence it? Sometimes people don't know what they don't know. Maybe they will like it if they try it or if you find a way to make it more accessible. But forcing it on someone, just saying, okay, you will go online and do all these courses because I said so, is about as good as me telling my kids doing that. It's just not going to work. It doesn't happen. However, if I find a way to make it accessible or more interesting or blend it in a way that they're happy with, then I think you're more successful. At least that's the way I have it to do with it in industry, not necessarily the higher ed. It might be different in the K through 12 or higher ed.
Speaking to the question before about how do we bring blended learning to corporate America, um, kind of overlaps with this question a little bit. Uh, I have a service and a sales side to the business that I run, and we work with a number of manufacturers, and they all bring different kinds of training. But surprisingly, one does it really well. There is online training, but there's also face-to-face learning in the case of webinars and things like that. Not asynchronous, but synchronous learning. And then there's also on-site on the manufacturer site training, and they also will come into our site depending on what the training is. And I think that's also a great way to reach different learners, depending on how they are best, best approach their learning environment.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you. I'm just looking at the time, and I know we only have another minute or two left, and we're getting the signal, but I looked at my watch. Are there any other questions or anything that we can answer? If not, first, I just want to thank everybody. I know it's late in the day. It's the last session. I just want to thank you all for sticking with us and, learning about this because I do have a passion for it. It's what I've built my career on and something I do. And I also want to thank my colleagues here. I enjoyed getting to know each one of them over the last couple of weeks or days as we were preparing for this. So I just want to thank everyone.
Thank you.
Anybody want to say anything else?
No, I'll just say thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Can you believe that we've already wrapped up another amazing conference? Thank you to all of our speakers. We are all leaving with a few extra tricks up our sleeves. Your contributions have been the highlight, leaving us a bit smarter and a bit more inspired. But for all of you here with us today, this isn't the end. We're just getting started. We do have some exciting editions happening next year in Dubai, and we also have another USA edition coming up soon. And we'd also like to give a special thank you to our gold sponsor, Sean K. Shakarami, the founder and CEO of Ophelio. Your unwavering support has truly made this event a resounding success. It has been an amazing journey partnering with all of you, hosting and engaging you. I am your MC, Jillian. I'll see you next time. Thank you.